Okay, so you've decided to do your fire risk assessment yourself. Awesome. I'm going to take you through the basic steps of an FRA in this video. What's up guys, welcome back to Rebranding Safety, the YouTube and podcast channel translating health and safety to help you save lives and save money. So if you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell so you never miss another episode and we can translate health and safety for you. So today we are covering the basics of a fire risk assessment to enable you as a business owner or manager to be able to do this yourself. Before we get into that, probably worth mentioning that there are some environments where I advise you should probably consult with a health and safety and or fire safety professional, is where you've got sleeping risk. These become much more complicated processes and I would advise you probably involve a fire safety professional or consultant. Where you've got complex needs in your property, so your customers, your patients, your visitors, your staff have a complex set of needs that really complicate the process around prevention of a fire and then evacuation or emergency procedures. Then we've got some environments that are not as high risk to employ a fire safety consultant or a fire safety professional. So it might be worth then having a generalist fire safety professional in your business who has experience in doing medium risk fire risk assessments. Some of these environments might be manufacturing, where you've got flammable chemicals and things like that. It's a little bit too much for your business owners, but you might need someone who's got that bit of a safety background to be able to help you. The best way to do this is that tiered approach, that low risk, medium risk, high risk. Low risk, you as a business manager or owner do it yourself. Medium risk, you probably work with your health and safety team and they do it. And then the high risk, you have a consultant. But all of the stuff we'll go through in this video still apply, and it will only help you interpret the fire risk assessment that your health and safety professional will complete for you. Why do it yourself? Because it costs a hell of a lot sometimes to employ a fire safety professional. So really consider if you need that specialist advice and if the risk is proportional. Okay guys, let's get on to the whiteboard. Okay, so pre-assessment, everything you need to do before you even start the fire risk assessment. First things first, you want to work out what guidance matches whatever operation you're doing. So if you're going to do a shop or a factory, you know, like a small place of assembly, large places of assembly or factories, manufacturing, there are guides for that and I'm going to link them in the description. Next thing you want to look for is any previous fire risk assessments or any other fire risk assessments that are active in the building. So you might be sharing the location, you might not be the landlord of the property, and the landlord might have to do a fire risk assessment. Get these in front of you so you can have a look and see what they're talking about. If you've had any previous fire risk assessments done, so maybe previously you've hired a consultant, get that other consultant's fire risk assessment, bring it on over, read it and see what they said. These are really going to help you, and also it'll just make it a hell of a lot quicker. Another key document is the fire strategy. Fire strategy is absolutely vital. These are going to tell you where alarms are, what the building was built to do and react in the event of an emergency. Okay, so team discussion. In the last video we spoke about getting a team. So we're assuming here it's your business or you're the manager, so you need to get your team together and you're all going to sit down, you're going to have a cup of tea and you have a conversation and get a feel for the business, get a feel for how we deal with fire safety. You'll be amazed at the amount of things that you can find out just from a conversation. You're basically just going to discuss what each of these people do. So if you've got like a machine operator, you're going to be like, how do you do what you do? What's it like? Is there any kind of fire hazards in what you do? When talk to the manager, what do you do? How does it work? And this might feel a bit stupid because maybe you already know what they do, but you're just starting those conversations. You're getting relaxed as a team. Might be the first time you're being a team and doing this kind of thing. So everyone's just getting a bit relaxed in a calm environment and we're just starting to get a feel for the business, and that's really, really important. Okay, so as we're going for a walk around the business, we're thinking about two things. And these are basically the principles of fire safety. We're talking about prevention and protection. We're going to try and prevent two things. We're going to try and prevent the fire, obviously from starting out, and then we're going to try and prevent spread. And then we're going to try and protect life. So we're protecting means of escape, we're protecting people, and they're the things that you need to think about whilst you're on your walkabout. So to fully understand prevention, we need to understand the basic science of fire. So let's talk about that. Okay, so now we need to understand what a fire actually is. So first we need to understand that fire is a chemical reaction. I'm no scientist, but to have a chemical reaction, you need things to come together to react. React meaning that like two things together, react. We have what is commonly known as the fire triangle. So we've got three components in this reaction. We've got heat, fuel and oxygen. Now we can't rightly remove oxygen because, well, we would all die. So if we can reduce the amount of fuel we've got and reduce the likelihood of heat being there in an uncontrolled manner. So now we understand the chemical reaction that is fire. So we want to try and reduce or eliminate ignition sources and heat, and we want to try and reduce, and if we can, eliminate fuel. But the fuel is probably going to be your business for a reason. Probably going to be your product or your packaging or something like that. The heat might even be there for a reason. Now you've got to think about how do you stop those two coming together. So if you're doing hot work, for example, you're going to try and remove all the fuel that's around. So you're not going to do hot work next to the cardboard store or the cardboard bin or next to the gas canister. And whilst we can't really remove oxygen from our properties, you might have kind of operation where you have oxygen, and if you do have oxygen, you're probably now falling into that higher risk tier of fire risk assessments, and it's probably time to involve a consultant. Okay, so let's think about spread then. So how do we stop fire spread? Well, two main key things here for me is one, housekeeping. It's probably the biggest issue. You jump now onto a video of the Bradford football stadium fire. Housekeeping was basically one of the biggest problems there. It was terrible. So underneath kind of like the slats where they all sit, there was a collection of fish and chip paper, rubbish, etc. One cigarette on the floor, whole place goes, and if you watch the fire, you'll see how big it is. So housekeeping was, or poor housekeeping to be correct, was one of the biggest contributory factors to that fire. So housekeeping is massive for you guys to keep on top of. So you're looking for poor housekeeping when you're going around. The next thing is compartmentation. This is where the fire strategy comes in. So you're looking at fire doors, walls, ceilings and floors that are built to adequately resist the effects of fire. And that's going to do is stop spread throughout your building, and the fire strategy will tell you where those walls are, and there are some ways to find out, and we're going to do a compartmentation video to explain that in the future. Okay, so now I'm going to break down the key components that we're looking for as you're walking around the building, and these are... Okay, so there's a hell of a lot of stuff here, and you probably noticed by now that handwriting is completely different. Well, that's because my wife, editor-in-chief of this channel and apparently head of quality control, has said she wants to write everything on the board because my handwriting's shite and I keep spelling stuff wrong and having to re-record it. So I've tried to group a lot of these together. Alarms and detection. It's a common misconception that if you've got detection, you've got alarms. That might not be the case. Now we are talking complicated properties here, but it's worth noting that they are two different things. You can have sounders and detection, and you can have detection without sounders. So just be aware of that. So when you're walking around, you want to have a look up on the ceilings and around you looking for detection. And then you're going to want to know if that's the right one for the property. I find it really helpful to walk around with a floor plan and just mark a little cross every time you see a detector. Really good way of keeping track, and when you go back you can check the guidance and look at the floor plan, and you're not relying on memory. So signage is everywhere nowadays, absolutely everywhere, and if you do one thing at the end of the video, go and find a piece of signage at your workplace that you don't need and take it down. Anyway, you need to basically communicate the means of escape. Now you could go real in depth here and talk about signage on telling people how to operate exit doors and things like that. Let's get this real simple. If you stand anywhere and you had a blindfold on, you take your blindfold off, you should be able to look around and know where to go. So how do we put that into real life? Well, in theory, you're in a meeting room. You want to be able to step out of that meeting room, out the door, and look and be able to see a sign to tell you how to get out of the building. That's the simplest way, whether that's the final exit door, so it says fire exit, or it's an arrow and a man running on it. That's what you're looking for. So if you've got that floor plan as you're walking around, mark it on there. Firefighting equipment. Depending on your building, depending on what it is, you might have risers as well. Now risers are quite complicated buildings, so this is probably an indicator of having higher risk buildings and you might need to engage with a consultant. Other firefighting equipment, extinguishers. Technically these are called first aid firefighting equipment, but let's not be pedantic. You just want to be looking at you've got these. And again, go back to your guidance and find out where they are, but if you've got that floor plan, mark where they are. Simple. They shouldn't be blocked, they should be in easy to get locations. There's also guidance around how you should fit them on the wall. You want to be making sure that they're serviced, so 9 times out of 10 you're going to have a sticker on it and it's going to say serviced on this date. They're going to be annual service. You want to be checking as well that they're having visual inspections, and you might just do this as you go around. If it's your business, you might be doing this as part of your fire risk assessment. Depends on the policies and procedures, which brings me nicely to information, instruction and training. There we go. Part of that information and instruction is going to be policies and procedures, how you do what you do. Training is really important. You want general training around general fire safety in your business. How do people know what they're doing? How do people know to be safe in what they're doing? You're also going to want to talk about maybe specific fire safety training. You might have hot works going on, engineering work, something like that. That's specific training. Then you're going to want emergency training. So emergency planning, you're going to want to see drills, you're going to want to see records of fire warden training if you've got fire warden training. Next thing then, we've got suppression systems. So you might have a building that's got sprinklers. Now, most factories have sprinklers. There's not crazy systems. It's not too high risk to have them. You might have them in racking in factories and warehouses, large factories and warehouses. You might also have automatic suppression system in kitchens, commercial restaurants. Some big restaurants have them. You'll see the little nozzles above you and they'll just kind of spurt foam all over the cooker and shit and put fire out. A lot of insurers of buildings require you to have them, to protect your product, to protect the building. They're quite simple systems. They have a British standard that will tell you how to maintain them, but really it's quite simple. So you want to be checking if you've got them, you have got them, take a note, and when we get to the end, we'll tell you what to do. Okay, emergency lighting, kind of go hand in hand with signage. Emergency light is pretty simple. It's a light on the wall or the ceiling that stays on when the power cuts out. Common misconception, emergency lighting will come on when the fire alarm goes off. That only depends if your fire alarm is set up to cut your electrics out. They only go on when the electrics cut. So it's not a problem if they're not connected to your alarms because your electrics stay on. And then when your electrics go out because of the fire, the emergency lighting comes on. Pretty simple. So it doesn't really matter, but it's worth knowing. Where do you need emergency lighting? Well, quite simple, change of direction, change of level, and 1 meter within a sign. Top tip, move the signage, not the light. Sounds simple, but a lot of people put emergency lighting where signage is and it costs them quite a lot of money. Okay, so now we know we've got all of this stuff, we've walked around the building and we can see it, we're going to talk about what to do next. And that is, so we're looking at testing and records. So have a look at a couple of things here. We're going to have a look at the maintenance systems that you've highlighted throughout your walkabout. You're going to take that list and you're going to come back to your office or whatever and you're going to get the maintenance records matching to all those systems. And then you're going to match all of that to the guidance, or you might need to go to the British standards. Emergency lighting, extinguishers, they all have their own British standard. If you've matched the guidance to your operations, say for example a factory or a large place of assembly, you're going from the large place of assembly guide, you will have that support and that guidance in that guidance document. The next thing to test is training records. So when you're on your walkabout, take some names. I would say maybe take 6 names randomly, and then take names of wardens. So you might have it displayed in your factory, in your warehouse, in your shop, in your restaurant, in your offices, whatever. You might have it displayed. Wardens. Okay, pick half of those. If it's not a lot, pick all of them. And you're going to go back to the office and you're going to check the records of training for those people. Now I said take 6 names. I would check 3 because you haven't got a lot of time and we don't want to be there all day. So I would check 3. If those 3 are good, forget the other 3. If those 3 are bad, do the other 3. If those other 3 are bad, it's significant finding. Now we're going to look at how the business test their systems. So what do they do? Do they do drills? So every business will plan for emergencies. So we want to be looking at what they're doing. Yeah, and your drills might fall into your training, and that's fine, but we want to look at how the business are testing what they're doing. Are they doing drills, your emergency drills? If they are, how are those drills going? How are they measuring feedback from those drills? All of that stuff is really, really important. So we've got maintenance records, we've got training records, and then we've got emergency planning testing records. Okay, so the write-up. Up until this point, throughout the whole video, I've not once said you're going to record that in your risk assessment. You're going to write that down. I might have said take some notes, and you might have taken more notes than someone else, and someone else might take loads of notes, and that's the same thing. But it's what you record in the risk assessment that's key. This is different depending on what template you're using. So say for example, if you use the HSE fire risk assessment template, there's not a lot in it. And that's fine for most of you watching this video. You could even use the same template that you use for your normal risk assessments to keep consistency throughout your business, and that may be a great idea for you. If you're going to use a consultant or someone like that, they're probably going to use a template such as like a PAS 79, for example. These are much more in-depth, long, big documents, and there'll be a lot of information in there. They might break it down, and there's loads of different ways to do a PAS 79, but mostly there's going to be a bulk amount of data. And when I say data, they're going to be recording what they've found when they go through, and they'll record everything to give you a full, in-depth, comprehensive fire risk assessment. However, the difference is, and the key is, what we are currently horrendously bad at in the UK is we write down everything, absolutely everything. And if you're a listener to the podcast, you've listened to the fire risk assessment podcast, and I will link that in the description as well. And if you've listened to the normal risk assessment podcast, I'll link that in the description below. You'll know that I'm a massive advocate for not writing a lot down. You are legally required to write down the significant findings. Significant findings. Significant findings. It's like significant is something big. Something big. So let's give you an example. I'm going to go do a fire assessment, right? And I come across a fire door. That fire door is just shit. Okay? It's just crap. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to write that down. In my notes, I'm going to write that down. And then I'm going to keep going. I don't find any other fire doors that are bad. Okay, that's fine. Now bear in mind, I'll be doing this in kind of like a consultant role or a fire risk assessor role, and I would write into my risk assessment as an advisory or as a note in the fire door section. I would write, it was noted that door 1 to the lounge was dog shit, but I'm not going to put it as a significant finding because it's not. However, if I went to door number 1 in the lounge and that was dog shit, and then I went to door number 2 and that was crap, and then I went to door number 7 and that was rubbish, and I went to door number 12 and that was rubbish, then I went to door number 20 and that was rubbish, and then I come across another door and that was crap, and went to the plant room and that was crap, I'll be like, okay, now we've got a significant problem here. You are obviously not maintaining your fire doors. That is a significant finding, and that goes into the significant findings section where it says, business does not have a maintenance scheme for their fire doors. So that's just one example of how we do it. I'm trying to put it into perspective here for you that it's not a snagging list, and that's so important. So on the write-up, depending on how you do it, you might have a risk assessment written up, and that's fine if that's how you want to do it, because you might want to use that as a way to identify a lot of information and collate a lot of information, and that's fine. If you don't, you are legally required to write down and record the significant findings. And if you're not sure about the law, you can check out our regulatory reform order podcast, where we've also linked down in the description below. Okay guys, thanks for listening. I hope you found that useful. Drop me a comment below if you already do your fire risk assessment yourself. If you don't and you're planning on, drop me a comment below as well. I'd love to know how many of you are doing these yourself. If you like this video, don't forget to click like, and make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell so you never miss another episode. I'll catch you next week on Rebranding Safety. Peace out. Safe. Bye.